In the classified Wehrmacht archives, declassified only in the 1990s, there's one peculiar entry. Order number 47 from the command of the 17th Army. It speaks of a special bounty, 1,000 Reichsmarks and extraordinary leave to any sniper who eliminates an American woman. Not a general, not a commissar, a woman. In the document, she's designated as Schwarzer Teufel, Black Devil. Throughout the entire history of World War II, this is the only recorded instance of German command offering a personal reward for the elimination of a female combatant. But the most shocking part isn't that. In the same archive, they found the diary of German officer Kurt Meyer. The last entry, made before his capture: "I saw her today, in battle. She killed 3 of my men with her bare hands. When she looked into my eyes, I understood. This is not a woman before me. This is death itself in a skirt. God help us. Why are we fighting such people?" The officer was wrong about only one thing. Evelyn Caldwell never wore a skirt at the front. Only a black Marine Corps jacket, which became the last thing hundreds of enemy soldiers ever saw. But let's go back to the very beginning. Part 1. The Dust Bowl Child. Harlan County, Kentucky, 1926. Little Evie, as they called her at home, sat on the porch steps watching her mother try to feed 8 children with watery soup made from dandelion greens and corn husks. Her father had died a year ago, not from disease, from starvation. Simply didn't wake up one morning, having given his last piece of bread to the youngest. Her mother, Ruth Ann Caldwell, didn't cry in front of the children. Only at night did Evie hear her choking on sobs into her pillow, trying not to wake the little ones. It was then, at age 10, that Evelyn made her first adult decision. She would never be helpless again, never let her family starve, and she certainly would never cry. Tears were a luxury she could no longer afford. Spring of 1928 brought a different kind of trouble. A gang of deserters and criminals terrorized the surrounding hollows. They'd burst into homes, take what little remained, and with the women, well, that was something folks only whispered about. When the bandits appeared in Harlan, everyone hid. Everyone except 12-year-old Evie. The old-timers told this story like a legend, but documents in local police archives confirm every word. The girl walked out to meet the bandits with a bucket of water, supposedly from the well. The leader, a massive man with a revolver at his belt, laughed out loud. "Well, look at that. A proper welcome." He approached her, bent down, and at that moment Evie threw in his face not water, but lye, a caustic solution of ash used for washing clothes. The man howled, grabbed at his eyes. The girl snatched his sawed-off shotgun and, without hesitation, fired point blank. The other bandits froze. Before them stood a scrawny girl with a shotgun she could barely aim. The barrel trembled from the weight, but her eyes? In her eyes there was no fear. Nothing at all. Emptiness, as if looking not at a human but something ancient and terrifying. The bandits turned and left. Just left. And Evie calmly dragged the leader's body to the sheriff's office and went home. Her mother asked only, "Did you wash your hands?" "Yes, Ma." That episode could have been a lifelong trauma, but for Evelyn it became a revelation. She understood the main thing. In a critical moment, a person is capable of anything, absolutely anything. The question is only whether they have the spirit to cross the line. She had it at 12. She'd have it later. By 17, Evelyn had transformed into a beautiful young woman, tall, statuesque, with long chestnut hair and remarkably clear gray eyes. Boys from the county stared. Proposals came almost every week, but she turned them all down. Not rudely, but firmly. She had other plans. In 1933, when the Depression hit Kentucky hard, the Caldwell family miraculously survived. Evie was already working in the coal mines by then, hauling carts alongside the men. The mine foreman, Harlan Page, a hard but fair man, pulled her aside one day. "Listen, Evie, you're strong. I can see that. But there's nothing for you here. Go to the coast, learn a trade, or you'll waste yourself." He wrote her a letter of recommendation to the Norfolk Naval Shipyard in Virginia. Norfolk greeted the 17-year-old with the roar of industry and the smell of the sea. The shipyard was enormous, terrifying, and beautiful all at once. Evelyn was assigned as an apprentice in the welding shop. Hellish work, 8 hours near molten metal in noise and fumes. The male welders initially looked at her with smirks. What kind of welder could a woman be? After a month, the smirks disappeared. The girl didn't just cope, she worked as if she was born holding a welding torch. But the most interesting part happened after shifts. Evelyn rented a room from an elderly Italian woman near the port and walked to the water every evening. That's where she first saw them, the Marines. Black uniforms, distinctive covers, special bearing. They were different. You could feel strength in them, but not the crude strength of county boys or shipyard workers. This was disciplined, conscious strength. Gunnery Sergeant Hank Dawson noticed the girl who sat on the pier every evening watching their drills. He approached, introduced himself. Turned out they were recruiting for corpsman courses at the Marine base. "What do you say, miss? Want to give it a try? Work's not easy, but it's meaningful." Evelyn agreed without thinking. At the courses, the instructor, Navy Corpsman Abraham Rosenstein, was a man of the old school, had been through the Great War and various skirmishes. At the very first class, he laid a human hand on the table, a real one, from the morgue. Half the girls ran out of the classroom. Evelyn stepped closer and calmly asked, "Why are the fingers curled like that?" Rosenstein looked at her more carefully. "Rigor mortis. Sit in the front row. You'll be my assistant." In 6 months, she mastered what normally took 2 years: anatomy, surgery, pharmacology, but most importantly, psychology. "Remember, girl," Rosenstein taught, "a wounded man isn't just a body with a hole in it. He's a person in shock, in terror, often delirious. Your job isn't just to stop the bleeding. You have to become his anchor. Voice, gaze, touch, these are medicines sometimes stronger than morphine." Spring 1941. At the graduation ceremony, Evelyn met Second Lieutenant Alex Peterson, a tall, dark-haired Texan with a handsomely trimmed mustache. They danced, then walked along the waterfront until dawn. Alex recited poetry, talked about the future, about how after his service he'd return to his family's ranch outside San Antonio, marry her if she'd agree. June 21st, 1941. They agreed to meet that evening in the park. Evelyn came in a new dress she'd saved for 6 months to buy. Alex brought a bouquet of wildflowers. They sat on a bench, and he held her hand. For the first time in her life, she allowed a man such liberty. "You know, Evie," he said quietly, "I have this feeling like something's about to happen, something big." She smiled. "Don't jinx it." They sat until midnight. Then he walked her home. At parting, he kissed her, the first kiss of her life. Awkward, hurried, tasting of excitement and premonition. "See you tomorrow?" he asked. "Tomorrow," she promised. Tomorrow came at 7:48 a.m. Pearl Harbor. Explosions, sirens, screams. War. She never saw Alex again. His unit shipped out within hours, and by evening his battalion was sailing for the Pacific. Whether he died or not, she never learned. He simply disappeared, like millions in that meat grinder. All that remained were dried wildflowers she kept until her death. But there was no time for tears. Norfolk transformed into hell. Wounded arrived by the hundreds. Evelyn, along with other corpsmen, was thrown into evacuation operations. The first wounded man she saw was a boy, about 18. Half his face was gone. Just gone. He looked at her with one remaining eye, trying to say something. She leaned down. "Mom, where's Mom?" he rasped. Evelyn took his hand. "Mom's coming. Hold on. Mom's on her way." He died a minute later, squeezing her palm. In the first 24 hours, she treated over 200 wounded. Her hands shook, her legs wouldn't hold, but she continued. Rosenstein appeared beside her. The old man had also been mobilized. Seeing her condition, he poured straight alcohol from his flask into her mouth. "Drink. Don't think. It's the only way not to go insane." She drank. It burned her throat, but the shaking stopped. Part 2. Guadalcanal. By fall 1942, Evelyn found herself on Guadalcanal. The island was preparing for one of the bloodiest campaigns of the Pacific War. Marines were digging trenches, laying mines, setting up artillery. She was assigned to the medical battalion of the 7th Marine Regiment. The battalion commander, Major Whitlock, gave her an appraising look when they met. "Corpsman, huh? Well, we'll see what you're made of. Fair warning, I won't coddle you. Can't handle it, I'll send you to the rear." The test came quickly. November 12th, the Japanese began their first major assault. Artillery preparation lasted 4 hours. The ground shook like in fever. When the infantry attack began, Evelyn was at a forward aid station, a simple dugout 300 yards from the defensive line. Wounded came in a flood. Stretchers ran out. They dragged men on ponchos, in arms, by their collars, and then it happened. The thing that changed everything. The Japanese broke through. A group with submachine guns burst right into the aid station. Corpsman Rosenstein covered the wounded with his body and took a burst to the chest. Fell. 2 medics raised their hands. And Evelyn, she didn't even remember how it happened. A rifle from a dead Marine was in her hands. First burst, the Japanese soldier at the entrance folded in half. Second burst, 2 more. She fired calmly, methodically, as if at the range. When help arrived, 7 bodies in olive drab lay at the aid station entrance. Major Whitlock ran up an hour later, saw the scene, whistled. "You do this?" Evelyn nodded. Her hands started shaking again, adrenaline releasing. "How many wounded did you pull out?" 32. "And Japanese?" 7. The major was silent, then said something she'd remember her whole life. "You know, Caldwell, you'd make an excellent Marine. Shame you're a woman." But the worst was ahead. During the December assault, the aid station was cut off. They held out under siege for 3 days. Medical supplies ran out. Water, food. The wounded were delirious, dying. Evelyn did the impossible. Bandaged with strips torn from Japanese uniforms, gave them dew collected from ponchos. Held the defense. On the 3rd day, when ammunition was running low, she made a decision. Walked out of the dugout with a white rag. The Japanese officer, seeing a woman, was dumbfounded. She spoke in broken Japanese, learned some at base. "I have 30 wounded. They need help. I'll surrender if you don't touch them." The officer laughed. "American pig, you're in no position to make demands." And then she did what he didn't expect. Tore off her jacket. Underneath, a grenade without a pin tied to her body with bandages. "Either you give your word as an officer, or we all die together." The German paled, then slowly nodded. They carried out the wounded, loaded them on trucks. When the last one was evacuated, Evelyn carefully reinserted the pin. The officer looked at her with something resembling respect. "What is your name, miss?" "Caldwell." "I will remember." An hour later, American forces retook the position. They found Evelyn sitting among the corpses with a rifle on her knees. She was smiling. The grenade story spread throughout Guadalcanal. Marines passed it from mouth to mouth, embellishing details. They said she held an entire platoon hostage, that a Japanese general personally came to negotiate, that she saved not 30, but 100 wounded. Evelyn didn't deny it. The legend wasn't needed for her, for them, the fighters going in to attack. But real fame came after the battle for Hill 65. This was a key position on the approaches to Henderson Field. Whoever controlled the hill controlled the airfield. January 15, 1943, the Japanese pushed out our battalion. The order was iron: retake at any cost. First Lieutenant Volkov's company went on the attack at dawn. Evelyn moved behind the line, ready to pick up wounded. But the attack stalled. Volkov was killed in the first minutes. Junior commanders, too. The company pinned down under murderous fire. And then the worst began. Panic. Someone yelled, "Fall back!" Men started crawling backward. And then Evelyn did what later entered military psychology textbooks. She stood up. Simply stood at full height under fire and walked forward. Didn't run, walked. Calmly, measured, as if on a stroll. The black Marine jacket she'd taken from a dead Marine fluttered in the wind. Someone yelled, "Get down, you fool!" She turned around. "What? You men gonna let a woman show you up?" It worked. Sergeant Kowalski, a massive Pole from Chicago, was first to rise. "Shit, boys, that'd be embarrassing." He stood, roared, "For America!" and charged. The rest followed. Evelyn still walked calmly ahead. Bullets whistled around, but not one hit. Later, captured Japanese said they were certain she wasn't human, but a ghost, a woman walking under fire, smiling. They took the hill. 18 men remained from the company. Evelyn was wounded in the shoulder but refused treatment until she'd dressed everyone else. The regimental commander, Colonel Harper, came personally, formed up the company remnants, approached Evelyn. "Corpsman Caldwell, you're taking command of a platoon." She was stunned. "Sir, I'm a corpsman." "You were. Now you're a platoon commander, and that's not up for discussion." That's how she became the only female Marine platoon commander in United States history. Officially, with orders, seals, and all proper documentation. The men in the platoon accepted the appointment calmly. After what they'd seen, there were no questions. But for the Japanese, it was a real shock. In their military doctrine, a woman on the front line was a nonsense. A woman commander completely beyond comprehension. Rumors began to spread. They said the Americans were using some secret psychological weapon, that this woman was a witch who could charm bullets, that she drank the blood of killed enemies. Wehrmacht command became seriously concerned about the impact of these rumors on troop morale when they encountered her in North Africa later. That's when that famous order about a bounty for her head appeared, and soldiers began calling her Schwarzer Teufel, Black Devil, for the color of her jacket and the fear she inspired. Evelyn herself used this reputation. Before attacks, she'd deliberately wear the black jacket even when it was hot. She'd appear at the most dangerous sectors, always at the most critical moment. Created an image of an invulnerable, almost mystical figure. It worked. Her own men followed her like a talisman. The enemy shied away. Once they captured a German NCO. When brought to Evelyn for interrogation, he saw her and fell to his knees. Started rapidly muttering in German, crossing himself. The translator translated. "He says he's ready to tell everything, just asks you not to look in his eyes. Says you can kill with a glance." Evelyn smirked and in broken German answered, "Maybe, but not today, if you tell the truth." The NCO told everything. Troop positions, attack plans, even passwords. Later in the POW camp, he wrote in a letter home, I saw the American Valkyrie. She is beautiful and terrible at once. We cannot defeat a nation that has such women. Part 3. Commander. Commanding a Marine platoon isn't playing with dolls. 32 men, each with his own character, his own demons, his own pride, and here the commander's a woman, a young woman, a beautiful woman. The first days were hell, a psychological duel where the stakes weren't just authority but the lives of the entire platoon. Gunnery Sergeant McCullough, a career military man who'd been through campaigns, became the main opponent. He didn't openly violate regulations, too experienced for such foolishness. He played subtler, executing orders with mocking slowness, turning them into farce. The rest watched, waited for resolution. On the third day, Evelyn decided the question radically. Morning formation, she approached McCullough face to face. He towered over her, head taller, twice as wide, smirking. And then she struck with the edge of her palm to the solar plexus, a technique Rosenstein had taught her. McCullough doubled over, gasping for air. "Gentlemen," she said calmly, walking around the formation, "I propose a deal. You follow orders, I bring you out alive. Don't agree? Write a transfer request. But know this, with me, you have a chance. I've been in this war 2 years. I know how to survive." McCullough straightened up. "No questions, ma'am," and added, "Boys, she hits right, professionally." The platoon accepted her. But strength is only half the battle. Evelyn became mother, sister, confessor to them. Knew each one, who had family, who was waiting for letters, who had what troubles. Corporal Simons received a death notice about his mother, sat in the foxhole staring into space. Evelyn silently handed him a flask. He drank and cried. She hugged him. "Cry, Tommy. It's not shameful." He sobbed all night on her shoulder. In the morning, brought back a valuable prisoner. "For Mom," he said. Sergeant Peterson got dysentery, soiled himself in front of everyone. For a military man, worse than death. Wanted to shoot himself. Evelyn took away his pistol. "Half the platoon had the shits. You think you're special?" She bathed him herself, changed him, nursed him. He later said, "I'd walk through fire for the lieutenant." Spring 43, the inevitable happened. Captain Michael Blackwood, intelligence officer, 30 years old, calm, with living eyes, rare in war, met at a briefing. "Who's the beauty?" he asked a neighbor. "Caldwell, the Black Devil." Blackwood was surprised. "That's her?" They met in snatches, 15 minutes between battles, a night in a bombed-out house. He read poetry. She listened. Didn't talk about love, what words in war. But there was something in touches, glances, silences. "If we survive, marry me?" he asked once. Both knew they were lying, but the lie was necessary as air. In May, Blackwood went behind enemy lines. A week later, they found his team's bodies. Michael had been taken alive, tortured 3 days. Stayed silent. When they retook the position, they found the remains. Evelyn identified him by his ring, a family heirloom. The next day, she led the platoon against that unit. The battle was brutal. They took no prisoners. The chaplain later asked about violations. She looked through him. "War, chaplain. I'm making war." Part 4. The price. The most terrible part of commanding isn't fear for yourself. It's the necessity of sending others to death. Evelyn understood this in June 43, when she had to choose who to send to certain death. A German pillbox blocked the only supply road. No artillery, no air support, only infantry. 300 yards of open field under machine gun fire. Statistics are merciless. 1 in 5 survives, at best. She looked at her men. Peterson, 3 kids. Saunders, 45 years old but experienced. Simons, 18, whole life ahead. The Kowalski brothers, mother alone for both. How do you choose? Who do you send to die? She chose 5 most experienced, formed them up, explained the mission. All understood. Simons smiled crookedly. Saying goodbye? She grabbed his shoulders. That's an order to return alive. Watched through binoculars as they crawled. 100 yards, 150. Germans opened fire. Thompson went down first. 200 yards. Williams hit but kept crawling. And then Simons jumped up, ran straight at the pillbox. Germans shifted fire. He was stitched with bullets. Fell. Got up. Ran. Fell for good. Those seconds gave the others time to get close. Explosion. Another. Silence. One returned. Told the story. Tommy covered the grenades with his body, yelled, "For the lieutenant! For the Black Devil!" That night, Evelyn got drunk. First time in the war. Alone in the bunker, howled like an animal. Then vomited, then drank again. Talked to the dead. "Forgive me, boys. Forgive me." In the morning, led the platoon into a new attack. Because war. Over 2 years, more than 200 men passed through her command. 143 died. She remembered each by name, by face, knew how each died. They came at night, not in nightmares, just came, sat beside her, were silent. She talked to them. "I couldn't save you." Sentries thought she was delirious. She wasn't. It was easier this way. 4 wounds. First, shrapnel in the shoulder. Second, bullet in the thigh. Third, concussion, deaf in left ear. Fourth, the worst. March 44, liberation of a field hospital. Thought it was an ambush, but there were children, German children. Officers' families, 30 people from infants to teenagers. A nurse, just a girl, stood between the children and the rifles. "Don't shoot! Children!" Evelyn ordered weapons lowered. Private Hutchins snapped. Germans had massacred his family. "These are future killers," he screamed. Evelyn stood between him and the children. "You'll have to shoot through me." He fired. The burst shredded her arm, shattered the elbow. She didn't flinch. With her left hand, drew her pistol, shot Hutchins in the leg. "Make another move. I'll kill you." They handed the children to the MPs. Hutchins went to the brig under guard. 2 days later, they found him dead, throat cut. Whether by his own men or himself, they never determined. After the hospital, she returned, but something had broken. The men looked at her warily. She'd defended German children, wounded one of their own. In war, that's not forgiven. The new battalion commander offered rear duty. "You're tired, Caldwell." She refused. "I've been tired since year 1. Didn't get sent back then. Let me finish." And she fought mechanically, without emotion, became a perfect war machine. Only at night would she take out Blackwood's photo. Tried to remember his voice. Couldn't. War eats such details. Part 5. Iwo Jima. February 1945. Iwo Jima. If hell exists on Earth, it was there, on that volcanic island. 36 days. Remember that number. 36 days of some of the most brutal fighting in Marine Corps history. They included Evelyn's platoon in the assault at the last moment. Needed experienced fighters, those who'd already seen death and weren't afraid to look it in the eyes. When they called for volunteers, she stepped forward first. Behind her, the whole platoon, even the new guys who'd arrived after the Hutchins incident. The landing began at dawn. Rough seas, volcanic ash clouds, machine gun fire from hidden bunkers. Half the first wave never made it to the beach. Evelyn stood at the boat's bow, peering into the smoke. Next to her, a young lieutenant on his first combat operation. He vomited on the commander's boots. She didn't even move, just said, "It's all right, Lieutenant. You'll catch your breath on shore." The shore met them with hell. The Japanese had turned the entire island into a fortress. Every cave, every tunnel, every ridge fortified. And that black sand. Couldn't dig in. Boots sank. No cover. Evelyn's boat took a direct hit 100 yards from shore. The explosion tore open the hull. Water poured in. "Jump!" she yelled, and jumped first into the freezing water. 20 men made it to shore out of 35. The rest drowned. Packs, weapons, wet gear pulled them under. Evelyn pulled out 3, diving into the water, grabbing drowning men by their collars, dragging them to shore. Sergeant McCullough later said, "I thought she'd lost it, going back and forth, back and forth. Then I realized she's collecting her boys, living and dead." On the beach was hell, narrow strip of volcanic sand. Above it, cliffs, and on the cliffs, Japanese firing almost point blank. Marines pressed against rocks, tried to dig in. But how do you dig in volcanic ash? The shovel slips, ash collapses. And then Evelyn did what later got her recommended for the Navy Cross. She led the platoon remnants in a frontal assault on the cliffs, climbed an almost vertical slope under fire, grabbed roots, rocks, each other. The Japanese didn't expect such audacity. By the time they redirected fire, the Marines were already on top. Hand-to-hand combat in the dark is a special kind of nightmare. Can't see the enemy, only shadows. Hit everything that moves. Yell passwords so your own don't kill you. Evelyn fought with an entrenching tool. Her rifle had jammed from seawater. A Japanese NCO jumped from the darkness, struck with his rifle butt. She dodged. The shovel went under his ribs. He choked, fell. She stepped over and kept going. By morning, they'd secured a foothold, counted losses. 12 men remained from the platoon. Evelyn gathered them, looked each in the eye. "Any wounded? No? Then dig. Dig deep. This is just the beginning." And it began. 36 days of hell. The Japanese realized they couldn't push out the Marines by conventional means, started methodically plowing the beachhead with artillery. 1,000 shells a day. The ground shook constantly. Foxholes collapsed. They dug them out, collapsed again. No food, ammunition running low. Couldn't bring supplies by sea, too dangerous. Airdrops missed, fell to the Japanese half the time. Ate everything. Boiled leather belts, chewed grass, dead fish washed up on the beach. On the 20th day, 7 men remained from Evelyn's platoon. 7 for 100 yards of defensive line. She spaced them 15 yards apart. Fire only on sure shots. 1 bullet, 1 Jap. Count rounds individually. Day 25. The Japanese went for a psychological attack. Turned on loudspeakers, Wagner's music, then a female voice in English. "American soldiers, you've been abandoned by your command. No one's coming for you. Surrender. We guarantee life and medical care." Private Peterson, a kid from Wyoming, suddenly stood up. "Maybe we should surrender. We're all gonna die here anyway." Evelyn approached him, took his shoulders. Didn't hit, didn't yell, quietly said, "Peterson, you're a good Marine, but if you talk about surrender again, I'll shoot you. And that'll be mercy. Because if you surrender, they'll torture you until you tell everything, then kill you anyway. We're Marines. We don't get taken prisoner." Day 30. Brought something unexpected. That night, a man crawled into their foxhole. Evelyn aimed her pistol. "Password?" "What password, ma'am?" "I'm from Captain Morris in Baker Company." He negotiated with the Japs for a local truce. 2 hours. Pull out wounded, bury the dead. Evelyn went to Morris. He sat in a dugout smoking a Japanese cigarette. Caldwell, you hear? Worked out a deal with the Japs. 2 hours of quiet. You lost your mind? No. I've got 18 wounded who'll die if we don't evacuate them. The Japanese have wounded too. Are we men or beasts? The truce happened. 2 hours of absolute silence. American and Japanese medics worked side by side, didn't talk, but didn't interfere with each other. Evelyn was carrying out wounded McCullough, shrapnel in the gut, needed immediate surgery. Nearby, a Japanese medic was dragging his man, stumbled, fell. Evelyn helped lift the stretcher. The Japanese looked with surprise, nodded. Arigato. She didn't respond. 2 hours later, the war continued, but something had changed. Now they knew on the other side were people too. Didn't make war easier, opposite, harder. Easy to kill monsters, hard to kill people. Day 36. The final order. Evacuation. Boats were coming at night, but not enough room for everyone. Priority, wounded and commanders. Evelyn refused. My men first. Major Clark, already wounded in both legs, barked, Caldwell, that's an order. You're needed there more than here. She left last. Counted her men, 5. Out of 35 she'd landed with, 5. As the boat pulled away from shore, the Japanese opened fire. Flares, machine guns, mortars. A shell exploded near the boat. Evelyn was thrown across the deck by concussion. Last thing she remembered? Private Peterson, the same one who'd wanted to surrender, covering her body from shrapnel. She woke on the hospital ship. Peterson lay on a stretcher nearby, stomach bandaged, face white as chalk. Ma'am, you okay? She tried to sit, head spun. Alive? Why'd you do something so stupid? He smiled weakly. You said it yourself. Marines don't leave their own. Peterson died an hour later. His last words? Mom, I want to go home. Evelyn closed his eyes, straightened his cover, then went to headquarters. Walked, swaying, concussion making itself known. Entered the command post where generals were discussing operation results. Major General Pritchard saw her. Caldwell, what are you doing here? You should be in sickbay. She stood at attention, swayed but held steady. Sir, Lieutenant Caldwell reporting. Request Private Peterson, Tommy Peterson, be entered for posthumous decoration. He saved his commander's life. The general nodded. It'll be done. Now get to sickbay. In the hospital, she lay for 2 weeks. Severe concussion, exhaustion, beginning scurvy. Doctors were amazed she'd even made it to headquarters. But Evelyn knew. Peterson helped her get there. And all those who stayed on that cursed strip of land. Part 6. The Cost of Being Mother. There's one particular thing about women in war that they don't write about in heroic books. Maternal instinct doesn't go anywhere. It transforms, takes strange, sometimes terrible forms, but remains. And for Evelyn Caldwell, her platoon became family. Dysfunctional, blood-soaked, but family. Spring 1944, after Iwo Jima. Her platoon, what remained of it, got replacements. They sent young ones, completely green, 18 to 19 years old. Some weren't even 18. Added a year or two so they'd be taken to the front. Among the new guys stood out one, Nate Whitmore, from Boston, intellectual family. Father was a Harvard professor, shot in 1938 during, well, that's another story. Mother was a literature teacher, died of grief a year later. Nate raised in an orphanage, but intellectuality's in the genes, can't be erased. Skinny kid with glasses, thin pianist's fingers. How'd he even get into the Marines? Mystery. Probably some recruiting officer decided to play a joke. Mean joke. In the Marines, guys like that don't last long. Nate's first battle went bad. When the artillery started, he curled in the corner of the foxhole and covered his head with his hands. Not from cowardice, from shock. The organism simply refused to accept reality where a person could be blown to pieces any second. The older men looked with contempt. Someone spit. Fucking intellectual. Should put him against a wall right away. And Evelyn came up to Nate, sat next to him in the mud, didn't yell, didn't shame, just hugged him like you hug a scared child. Nate, listen to me. It's scary right now, that's normal. But you have to move. Movement is life. Freeze, you die, understand? He looked up at her through thick glasses. Tears. I can't. I'm not made for this. She wiped his tears with her sleeve. Nobody's made for war, Nate. But we adapt. Humans are very adaptive creatures. Give yourself time. From that day, she took him under her wing, taught him not as commander to soldier, but as mother to son, showed him how to dig in properly. See, Earth is your friend. Deeper you dig, better your chances. How to distinguish sounds of shells. Hear that whistle? Not yours. Don't hear it? Run. How to preserve humanity. You'll have to kill Nate, but don't become a killing machine. Remember, you're human. Nate proved a capable student. After a month, no longer hid during bombardments. After 2, went on reconnaissance. After 3, saved Evelyn's life. It was near a newly captured town, clearing German positions. Evelyn entered a bunker first, always entered first, didn't trust anyone, and hit a booby trap. Click of the armed mechanism, 1 second to explosion. Nate flew in behind her, pushed her aside, covered her with his body. Explosion. When the smoke cleared, Evelyn saw Nate lying on her, back covered in blood. Shrapnel had stitched through his coat, stuck in flesh. She turned him over, started bandaging. He smiled through the pain. Ma'am, did I do right? Like you taught, don't leave your own? Right. You did everything right. He survived. 2 months in the hospital, but survived. Returned to duty with 2 scars on his back and a silver star on his chest. Evelyn met him at the train station, hugged him in front of everyone. Not embarrassed. Sergeant Kowalski muttered, Ma'am, that ain't regulation. She answered, Fuck regulations. My son came home. Yes, she called them sons. All these boys who were younger than her by just a few years. But war ages fast. At 26, she felt 50. And they responded with filial devotion. Brought her captured rations. Ma'am, eat something. Shared the last cigarette. Covered her with their coats when she fell asleep in foxholes from exhaustion. Once Evelyn caught pneumonia, temperature near 104, delirious. Medical battalion far away. Getting there, dangerous. Germans sweep the road. So her sons organized a real operation. Peterson and Williams went behind German lines to their field hospital, came back with captured medications, sulfonamides, newest German antibiotics. How they got them? Better not ask. Whitmore didn't leave her side for 3 days. Changed compresses, gave her herbal tea. Kowalski covered for her with brass. Lieutenant's on assignment. She survived. Got up on the 4th day, weak but alive. Formed up the platoon. Thank you, boys. They stood, eyes down. Big, scary, bearded men, smiling like children praised by mom. But the worst story happened with Private Thompson. A kid from rural Pennsylvania came to them after being wounded. Quiet, dutiful, diligent. Evelyn immediately felt something off. Too dutiful, too quiet. One night she woke with a strange feeling. Got up, went to check posts. Thompson wasn't at his post. Found him 100 yards from the position, standing with a flare gun in hand. A German flare gun. Thompson, what are you doing? He turned, In his eyes, madness, desperation. "Ma'am, my family. They have my family. Said if I don't—" Didn't finish. Started crying. Evelyn could have shot him on the spot, had the right. Treason. But she approached, took the flare gun. "Come on, son. Tell me everything." He told. Family, mother, 2 sisters, teenagers, in a camp. Germans found him through collaborators, offered a deal. He calls in artillery, they free his family. Refused at first. Then they sent a photo. What they were doing to his sisters? Better not describe. Evelyn listened, smoked one cigarette after another, then said, "You understand I should have you shot?" He nodded. "I understand. Can I do it myself?" She shook her head. "No, son. No execution, no suicide. You're gonna live and fight for your family. Really fight. And I'll figure something out." What did she figure out? Separate story. Connected with intelligence, with resistance. 2 weeks later, a coded message came. Thompson's family found and extracted. Alive. Traumatized, but alive. When Thompson found out, fell to his knees. "Ma'am," she lifted him. "Stand up. Men don't kneel. And remember, you don't owe me your life. You owe me death, a beautiful death in battle. Understand?" He understood. Died a month later. Threw himself on a machine gun embrasure. Classic maneuver. Before running at the pillbox, yelled, "For the lieutenant! For Mom Evie!" Yes, they called her Mom. A 26-year-old woman, and it wasn't strange. In war, all ages shift. 18-year-olds become old men. Part 7. Victory. May 1945. Victory. That word they'd waited 4 years for suddenly turned out so empty. Evelyn stood in the square of a liberated town watching people hug, cry from happiness, kiss strangers. And inside? Nothing. Absolute emptiness. As if, with the war's end, she herself had ended too. Demobilization didn't start immediately. First, they processed documents, turned in weapons, passed medical commissions. The psychiatrist, an elderly doctor with tired eyes, looked at her file for a long time. 4 Navy Crosses, Silver Star, Bronze Stars with V device, Purple Hearts. Only woman among Marines with full decorations. He looked up. "Lieutenant Caldwell, how are you feeling?" She shrugged. "Fine. Nightmares?" "No." He sighed. "You're lying, Lieutenant, but I understand. Fit for civilian life, though." He trailed off. "Go on." She left and he sat for a long time looking at her file, then wrote in the conclusion. Deep psychological trauma requires observation. But who in 45 read psychiatric conclusions? The war was over. Everyone wanted to move forward, forget faster, cross out those 4 years like a bad dream. Evelyn returned to Norfolk. The city she remembered flourishing lay in, well, not ruins. Norfolk hadn't been bombed, but changed. Everything changed. Went to the employment office. A major, balding bureaucrat flipped through documents. "Lieutenant Colonel, Marine Corps. Impressive. What can you do in civilian life?" She thought about it. Could kill, could command, could survive. What else? "Before the war, I worked in the shipyard, welding." The major perked up. "Excellent. The shipyards are hiring, need specialists." But at the shipyard there was no place. The director, a new man, shook his head. "A woman in welding? That's heavy work. I understand you worked before the war, but now men are coming back from the front. They need work more." She wanted to say she was also from the front, that she had more wounds than many men, but stayed silent, tired of arguing. Unexpectedly, work turned up in the coal mines. Yes, exactly in the mines, back in Kentucky. The mine director, Paul Kowalczyk, himself a veteran who'd lost a leg at Bastogne, looked at her documents and whistled. Jesus Christ, Caldwell. So you're that one. The Black Devil. She nodded. Listen, why the mines? With these decorations, you could be sitting in Washington writing memoirs. I need to work. Real work. He understood. Was the same way himself. Couldn't sit idle. Assigned her as crew chief. The men squinted at first. Woman underground. Bad luck. But when they saw how she worked, 12 hours without straightening, no complaints, they accepted. And when they found out who she was, respected her completely. Miner Brady, a massive guy, nearly 6 feet 5 inches, came up after a shift. Hey, Lieutenant. Can I call you that? Call me what you want. My brother fought under your command. Pete Williams, remember? She remembered. Pete died in '44, covering a retreat. Remember. Good Marine. Brady unexpectedly sobbed. He wrote in his last letter, if anything happens, Lieutenant'll bury me right. Thank you. And left, quickly wiping his eyes. Lived in the barracks with other miners. A room 6 by 10 feet, iron cot, nightstand. On the nightstand, a photo of her parents and that last one of Michael Blackwood. Nothing else. A neighbor, Claudia, a young widow with 2 kids, was amazed. Evie, you were a lieutenant colonel. They should give you an apartment. Should give lots of things, but who will? Evenings after shifts, sat by the barracks, smoked. Learned during the war. Now couldn't quit. Needed to keep hands busy or they'd start shaking. Not from fear. From memory. Muscle memory of trigger pulls, rifle weight, resistance of a blade entering flesh. Fall 45, a letter came from McCullough. Survived. Discharged after wounds, living in Philadelphia. Wrote crudely but sincerely. Lieutenant, think of you often. If you're ever in Philly, please visit. Wife will bake pies. Kids want to see a war hero. Tell them about you. Don't believe me. Say women like that don't exist. Started corresponding with former comrades. Who survived? Not many. Of her last platoon, 8 remained alive. Wrote rarely, sparingly. What to write? About civilian life they couldn't adapt to. About nightmares tormenting them at night. About flinching at loud sounds. About seeking cover at airplane sounds. Winter, 45. An incident that made even the local paper. Mine collapse. Trapped 7 men. Rescuers said, no hope, too deep. Evelyn went down herself. 12 hours digging out the collapse with bare hands. Tore off nails, blood mixed with coal, but dug them all out. All alive. When they brought them up, a local reporter ran over. Miss Caldwell, how did you decide to do it? It could have collapsed again. She looked at him like he was an idiot. There were people down there. My people. Said nothing more. After that incident, administration got moving. A representative from the state capitol came. Miss Caldwell, this isn't right. A war hero working in the mines? We can offer you a position in the state government. She refused. Thanks, no. But why? I don't know how to talk pretty. I know how to work. Left empty-handed. Spring 47, an invitation came to a Marine Corps veteran reunion in San Diego. Thought for a long time whether to go. Decided yes. Came. At the station, Kowalski met her, the former sergeant. Lieutenant, don't recognize you. Civilian clothes? She smiled crookedly. Getting used to it, Kowalski. War's over. The reunion was at the officers' club. About 300 people gathered. Generals, colonels, majors, and she, the only woman. When she entered the hall, everyone stood silently while she walked to her seat, then started applauding. She stopped, confused. All through the war, never once confused. But here, General Major Cutler, the same one who'd offered her rear duty, came up. "Caldwell, damn it. Why the mines? Why didn't you write? We would have arranged something." She shook her head. "Don't need it, sir. I'm fine." "Fine? In the mines?" "What's wrong with that? Honest work." He understood. Was the same way himself. At the banquet, sat in a corner, drank a little. The men got drunk, cried, hugged, came up to her, thanked her for service, for saved lives. She nodded, smiled, but inside, emptiness, as if all this was happening not to her but to someone else. Toward evening's end, an unfamiliar colonel with gray hair and a burn-scarred face sat down next to her. "You don't remember me, Lieutenant Caldwell. I was at Division HQ, saw you a couple of times in 43. "Maybe." I wanted to say, "My son was in your platoon. Andy Peterson." She remembered. Andy, a 19-year-old second lieutenant, died in 44. "Remember. Good officer." The colonel took out a flask. "Let's drink to him, and to all who didn't make it." Drank silently. Then he said, "You know, in his last letter he wrote, 'Dad, I have the best commander in the world. She doesn't just command. She takes care of us. Thank you.'" Got up and left. And Evelyn sat there and, for the first time in 2 years since the war ended, cried, quietly, hiding her face in her palms. Nobody noticed. Everyone was drunk. Part 8. The Weight of Memory. Years passed. The 40s became the 50s, then the 60s. Evelyn still worked in the mines, worked her way up to shift supervisor, then to safety engineer. Gray broke through her once chestnut hair. Wrinkles lay around her eyes, but her gaze remained the same, direct, piercing, seeing through. In 1965, for the 20th anniversary of victory, journalists from Stars and Stripes found her. A correspondent came from Washington, a young guy with burning eyes. "Miss Caldwell, you're a legend. The only female Marine platoon commander. Why have you been silent all these years?" She shrugged. "What's to tell? There was a war, we fought, we won. That's all." The journalist persisted. "But your story is unique. People should know. People should live. Let the past stay in the past." But the journalist was persistent, followed her for a week, begged, finally agreed to an interview. But when she read what he wrote, she was furious. What is this nonsense? Heroic Amazon, unbending Valkyrie. I was an ordinary commander, did my job. The journalist was confused. But we need the heroics. Don't need heroics, need truth. And the truth is, war is mud, blood, and death. No heroics there. They printed the article anyway, heavily edited. After it, letters started coming, hundreds of letters from across the country, from veterans, from youth, from women, different letters, thanking, asking advice, inviting to meetings. She answered all, briefly, but answered. One letter particularly stuck with her, from a German veteran. Yes, from a German. Kurt Meyer, that same officer who'd written about her in his diary. Survived, was captured, returned to Germany. Wrote through the Red Cross. Dear Miss Caldwell, perhaps this letter will seem strange to you. I fought against you. You were our nightmare, our black devil. But now, years later, I want to say, you earned my respect. You fought for your land as a true warrior should. I'm glad you survived. The world should know that in that terrible war there were people who preserved humanity. You saved German children at the cost of your own wounding. My niece was among them. She's alive thanks to you. Thank you. Kurt Meyer, Wehrmacht Major, retired. Evelyn looked at this letter for a long time, then wrote a reply. Mr. Meyer, the war is over. We were enemies. Now we're simply people who survived hell. I'm glad your niece is alive. Children shouldn't pay for adults' sins. Live in peace. E. Caldwell. In 1975, for the 30th anniversary of victory, they invited her to the White House, presenting the Medal of Freedom, the highest civilian award. The president personally presented it, shook her hand. Thank you for your service, Miss Caldwell. She nodded. Served the United States. After the ceremony, a marshal approached her, old, covered in decorations. Caldwell. The one. Depends what you mean, sir. I was Chief of Staff Pacific Theater in '43. Remember your reports. Always wondered how a woman could command Marines. Same as a man, just periods get in the way. The marshal choked, then burst out laughing. That's our style. No romance. The '80s. More journalists, now television. A film crew came from New York, making a documentary about women in war. The director, a young woman with intelligent eyes, asked, Miss Caldwell, why do you think so little is known about women veterans? Evelyn thought about it. You know, after the war everyone wanted to forget. Men because they were ashamed women fought alongside them. Women because they wanted to be women again, wives, mothers. And society. Society wasn't ready to accept the truth that women can kill as effectively as men. Do you regret anything? Evelyn was silent for a long time, then said, I regret not dying in the war. There everything was clear. Enemy, friend, duty. In civilian life? In civilian life, I never learned how to live. Epilogue. The Last Stand. 1988. Last interview. Local newspaper. Young journalist. Miss Caldwell, what would you like to say to the young generation? She looked out the window. Spring outside. Young people walking, laughing. May they never know what war is. May the worst thing in their lives be a failed exam or unhappy love. That's what I wish for them. Evelyn Margaret Caldwell died April 10, 1989, quietly in her sleep. A neighbor came by in the morning. She lay peaceful, as if sleeping. On the nightstand, that same photo of Michael Blackwood and a note. Bury me in the black Marine jacket. To the funeral came people from across the nation, generals, admirals, ordinary veterans. Young Marines carried the casket, kids who knew her only from legends. At the grave, an old general said, She was the best commander I ever knew. And the loneliest person. After the funeral, they found her diary. Last entry. All my life they called me a hero. But I'm not a hero. I'm just a woman who did what she had to do. Killed to protect. Died so others could live. And never learned to live myself. Maybe that's real heroism. Not knowing how to live, but continuing to the last breath, to the last heartbeat. In the Marine Corps Museum in Quantico, there's an exhibit dedicated to Evelyn Caldwell. Photo of a young woman in a black jacket, decorations under glass, yellowed documents, and a caption, the only female Marine platoon commander in United States history. The hero who didn't know how to be a hero. A woman who became a legend. Young cadets sometimes stop at the exhibit, read, marvel. The military history instructor, a gray-haired colonel, always says the same thing. Remember, cadets, war doesn't make heroes. It just shows who's capable of stepping over themselves for others. Evelyn Caldwell stepped over herself every day for 4 years, then lived with that weight for another 44 years. That's real courage. In 2020, they declassified the last archives, found a presidential order from 1944 to award Lieutenant Caldwell the Medal of Honor. But the order wasn't executed. A handwritten note by some general. Postpone. A female Marine hero could create an undesirable precedent. Undesirable precedent. So Evelyn Margaret Caldwell never got the Medal of Honor. But those who fought with her knew the truth. For them, she was always more than a hero. She was the Black Devil. The woman who made the toughest men cry, from gratitude, from respect, from understanding that in the hell of war, something human could be preserved. The story of Evelyn Caldwell isn't just about war. It's about the price a person pays for shouldering an unbearable burden. About a woman who became a legend, but lost herself. About heroism that doesn't end with the last shot, but continues the rest of your life. Quietly, unnoticed, without awards or honors. In memory of all the women who served in silence and died in obscurity, carrying burdens no human should bear.